Cutler maintains that the government is just out to get Gotti.
What Godfather? He's just a good man.
John Gotti was acquitted by a jury on all counts of conspiracy and racketeering.
You'd think you've seen it all on Netflix, but there's a chapter they've missed. John Gotti, the infamous mob boss, has detailed in his story that even Netflix hasn't shown. How can the world's largest streaming platform skip out on these key details? What pieces of the puzzle are we missing? Today, we're diving in, piecing together the evidence and filling in the blanks. This is the untold story of John Gotti. On October 27, 1940, in the busy part of New York City called the Bronx, a boy named John Gotti was born. He wasn't the only child. He had 12 siblings, but sadly, 2 of them didn't make it past birth. The Gotti family had deep ties to New York, but many believe their roots trace back to a beautiful spot in Italy named San Giuseppe Vesuviano. Interestingly, the Gotti name became well known in a group called the Gambino crime family. Not just John, but 5 of the Gotti brothers became part of this world. His brother Eugene joined before John, while Peter stepped in much later. Richard earned a strong position by 2002, and the youngest, Vincent, also joined them that year. A big move happened in John's life when his family decided to shift to East New York, Brooklyn. Here, life handed them lemons. Money was tight and John's dad did all sorts of jobs to make ends meet. John wished for a better life and often felt frustrated with his dad for their situation. School? Well, it wasn't John's favourite place. He often missed classes and found himself in trouble with classmates. By the time he was 16, John decided school was not for him. Outside of school, John was making friends, and not just any friends. These were street-smart folks who had connections with the famous New York City Mafia. In one of his early adventures at 14, John tried to steal a cement mixer from a construction site. This attempt didn't go well, and it ended up crushing his toes, leaving him with a permanent limp. In the midst of all this, love walked into John's life. He met Victoria DiGiorno, and they hit it off. By 1962, they tied the knot and started their family with 5 children. John even tried his hand at regular jobs, but his connection to the streets always pulled him back. But as John settled into family life with Victoria, there was another family that beckoned him, one that was much darker and more powerful than he could ever imagine. The streets had their grip, and there was one particular group that would soon play a pivotal role in his life.
The efforts against the mob have resulted in only temporary gains. The time has come to make these gains permanent. The time has come to cripple the power of the mob in America. Thank you very much.
John Gotti started working in the crime world with Carmine Fatico, a leader in the Gambino crime family. He, along with his brother and friend Rogerio, got involved in stealing trucks at Idlewild Airport. He became close to Joseph Massino and earned himself some nicknames, Black John and Crazy Horse. Under the guidance of Anelio Neal Della Croce, another big name in the Gambino family, Gotti made his way up. But he faced challenges. He got caught and went to jail a few times. After coming out of jail in 1972, Gotti took on illegal gambling and soon became an important member of the burgeoning crew. His bond with Della Croce grew stronger, and Gotti became known for being tough and fearless. In 1976, Carlo Gambino made a surprising choice. He picked Castellano to lead, even though many thought it would be Della Croce. This caused some tension in the Gambino family. Gotti, who joined the family a year later, quickly became one of Castellano's top guys, but always stayed close to Della Croce. Things changed when Gotti was part of a big crime in 1978. He and Castellano didn't see eye to eye. After Della Croce died and Castellano didn't attend his funeral, Gotti saw his chance. By the end of 1985, Gotti was the one in charge of the Gambino family. Once Gotti took over, he became a household name. Under him, the Gambino family became the most powerful mafia family in the US, making $500 million plus per year. John Gotti himself is estimated to have earned between $10 to $12 million annually during that period. To keep himself and his family safe, Gotti set one rule. No one in the Gambino family should admit the family even existed if they were arrested. With power and money flowing, his reign was unstoppable. Yet, it was more than just the wealth and the rules that set him apart. The streets of New York were about to witness a show like no other, with John Gotti in the spotlight.
I asked him, Mr. Gotti, how come you don't listen to the tapes? How come you don't put the earphones on?
I like Julio and Luis.
Imagine New York in the 1980s. The streets buzzed with life, and at its center stood a figure many couldn't forget, John Gotti. He smiled and waved to cameras, and the city watched, captivated. When he walked by, you felt his presence, a mix of charm and power. Romuald Payek was ready to testify against Gotti, but suddenly he couldn't remember a thing. What happened? Was it Gotti's doing? The newspapers jumped on the story. You might remember the catchy headline from the New York Post, "I for Gotti." It's the kind of line people talked about in cafes and on street corners. But life around Gotti wasn't all headlines. The world of the mob had real dangers. There was a car bombing meant for Gotti. Instead, his friend, DeCiccio, was the victim. The streets were in shock. Bombings like that weren't common. You could almost see the city holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. Gotti was often in court. Rumors said that he was scaring witnesses. Soon, he was behind bars. But even from jail, stories said he kept control, guiding his crew from the inside. In court, the tension was thick. It felt like a scene from a movie, and there was a plot twist. One of the juniors, George Pape, had been secretly talking to Gotti's team. The rumor was that he'd been paid a good amount of money. Gotti's lawyers put up a strong fight, denying every claim against him. And when the verdict was read, it was a shocker. Not guilty. That's when the nickname the Teflon Don started. Why? Because nothing seemed to stick to him. Things weren't easy for Gotti's group. Many of his close team members faced trouble with the law, but Gotti wasn't one to sit and watch. He made fast decisions, filling empty spots in his crew. Even started weekly meetings at a place called the Ravenite Social Club. Picture it, dim lights, quiet chats and smell of cigars, and somewhere hidden, FBI agents watched and listened. Gotti wasn't done. He was always making plans, teaming up with other groups and looking out for the future. One of his big moves was bringing in his son, John Gotti Jr., into his world. He made sure his son rose quickly in the ranks. As Gotti worked to solidify his empire and mentor his son, the law was watching closely. And soon, an episode would occur that would put Gotti's confidence and the entire legacy he was building to a critical test.
Good evening. His name is John Gotti, and tonight he's becoming known as the Teflon Don.
On January 23, 1989, John Gotti faced a big challenge. He was arrested for ordering an attack on John O'Connor, a union leader. Gotti, ever confident, said, 3-1 I beat this charge. The reason for the conflict? O'Connor had problems with a Gotti-linked restaurant and was no stranger to the law himself. But Gotti didn't stay in jail long. He was out the next day after paying $100,000. The FBI had secretly recorded Gotti talking about various crimes. Even with a tape of Gotti speaking about hurting O'Connor and someone ready to testify against him, Gotti walked free. On February 9, 1990, the court cleared him of all charges. That night, fireworks celebrated his release in some parts of town. Jules J. Bonavolonte noticed how Gotti was becoming popular, saying he's beginning to look like a folk hero. However, there's a twist. The FBI knew Gotti might have tried to sway the jury, but didn't share this, which upset many. By 1990, things began to change. The FBI and NYPD arrested Gotti, Sammy Gravano, and Frank Locazio. Their regular meeting spot had been bugged, and the tapes revealed secrets of the Mafia world. Charged with many crimes, including 5 murders, Gotti faced another trial. The recordings showed disagreements between Gotti and Gravano. When Gotti tried to blame Gravano for some murders, Gravano decided to help the police. This was a big deal. Mafia leaders didn't usually do that. The 1992 trial was major news. The prosecutors used the FBI tapes in Gravano's words to make a strong case. Gravano told the court about key Mafia events and connected Gotti to 4 murders. Despite Gotti's defense team working hard, the jury decided Gotti was guilty of everything. James Fox from the FBI commented, "The Teflon is gone. The Don is recovered with Velcro and all the charges stuck." On June 23rd, both Gotti and Locazio received life sentences and were fined $250,000. The Teflon Don's time at the top was over. While the world outside moved on, Gotti was plunged into a world of solitude. Gone were the days of power and influence. In their place stood cold bars and a heavy silence.
The stage is set for an epic showdown between the Teflon Don and the U.S. government.
A convoy of vans driven by heavily armed federal marshals had John Gotti moved out towards Brooklyn Federal Court. The
once mighty John Gotti found himself facing the 4 walls of a prison cell. Once ruling the streets of New York, he was now at the U.S. Penitentiary in Marion, Illinois. Here, Gotti's days were quiet and lonely. He stayed mostly alone in his cell, getting only a short hour outside. 1994 was a tough year for him. The US Supreme Court said no to his last attempt to get free. But troubles didn't stop there. In 1996, a prisoner named Walter Johnson had a fight with Gotti, said to be over some words Gotti used. Angry and wanting to settle the score, Gotti turned to the Aryan Brotherhood. He offered them a lot of money to deal with Johnson. But before anything could happen, the prison officials moved Johnson to a high-security place in Colorado. From inside the prison, Gotti still tried to hold on to his Mafia boss role. He sent orders and messages through trusted people, his brother Peter and his son John Jr. But in 1999, another sad news hit Gotti. His son, John Jr., got a 6-year prison sentence. In 1998, life threw Gotti another curveball. He got throat cancer. His health went downhill and he was moved to a medical place in Springfield. His fight with life ended on June 10, 2002. He was 61 years old. After he passed away, there was a special mass for him. But at his funeral, many Mafia families from New York City were missing. It seemed they wanted to move away from Gotti's shadow. Under his leadership, many of the Gambino family members ended up in jail. Even after his death, John Gotti's story kept living. Many people were curious about his life. On TV, actors like Armand Assante played him in Getting Gotti in 1994. And in another film, Gotti, John Travolta put on Gotti's shoes in 1996 and again in 2018. Documentaries dug deep into his life. The FBI files showed all the details. And in 2023, a Netflix show called Get Gotti told his story to many more. But it wasn't just movies and TV. Songs also had Gotti's name. Fun-loving criminals sang about him in King of New York. Even the famous Jay-Z mentioned him in a line, saying, "I never prayed to God, I prayed to Gotti." And that's not all. Other musicians like Five, Juicy J and Migos also brought his name into their tunes. John Gotti's story, from the noisy streets of New York to TV, movies and music, shows that he left a mark that won't fade easily. In our dive into John Gotti's life, we've uncovered facts that Netflix may have glossed over. But remember, every story has layers yet to be peeled back. What secrets still lie in the shadows? Did we even touch upon the whole truth, or is there an even deeper story waiting to be told? As the curtains fall on this tale, one can't help but wonder, what more is out there about Gotti that we haven't been shown? Stay curious and always be ready to search beyond the surface. The true story might just be around the corner. Got your heart rating, didn't we? Hit that subscribe button and join us on this thrilling journey. And hey, drop a comment below if there's a topic that's been keeping you up at night. We might just turn the spotlight on it next.